What's going on, YouTube? So we're back with my Gen 1 KLR650. We're going to be changing the foot pegs today. The stock rubber foot pegs have seen better days. I've almost lost my footing a few times already because of these things, and that's just on basic dirt roads and gravel roads, and just standing up on them seems to be a chore. This rubber will basically just roll around and around on here. I could probably technically pull it off. Also, the stock pegs are not spring loaded or anything. So yeah, it's time for an upgrade. Getting them off is actually really simple. All it is just this pin right here. And then there is an E-clip or C-clip or whatever you want to call it right there on bottom. Just take some pliers, pop that off, pull the pin out, and we'll have that old peg off in no time. So the pegs that I chose for my KLR are the IMS Pro Series. They are all stainless. There seems to be a ton of options on the market. I don't know, I guess you just have to make the best choice for you. You can get cheap pegs anywhere from probably 20 bucks all the way up into the $300 range. The IMS ones were 70 plus whatever shipping or whatever else you have to pay. They do come with springs, so these will spring back down rather than just staying up. Mostly I went with the all stainless because I didn't want the aluminum with the bolt on or screw on spikes. I was afraid that it would probably be held on with just standard steel. They would rust, wouldn't look good, wouldn't hold up. Also, I'm not super heavy, but I do weigh 215 to 220 pounds depending on the time of the year, and I really didn't want a peg breaking off and, you know, having a crash just because I went with cheap pegs. So I got the bike cheap enough that I feel it's worth it to put quality upgrades on it and still not be breaking the bank. And I think a good quality foot peg will really improve the ride quality of the bike. So one of the main complaints that I read or saw online about the IMS Pro Series is they're sharp and people get cut. Their bike goes down, or, you know, they just, whatever happens, they end up cutting themselves on these pegs. And I don't really understand why people don't just deburr them when they buy them. So yes, they are sharp. I've actually already touched on this one just a little bit just to see how easy it was going to be to clean up. But the machining edges, for example, they don't really chamfer them at all. They don't do anything with them. They leave it a hard machined edge here, everywhere. These corners, very sharp. The spikes, I know a lot of people said the spikes are very sharp. These here, they're not too bad. I think I'm going to leave those alone. But these outer ones right here, they will cut you. Just with a light pressure, you can actually scrape the skin off. So, yeah, I'm going to dull that out. I'm not going to leave that sharp and end up cutting myself in the middle of nowhere when I already know it's a problem. So, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I will show you what I'm going to do to take care of it. You could probably technically use a file. I don't know. Stainless is, you know, tough to work with. But all I'm going to use is just my cordless grinder and a worn out flap wheel, buff wheel, tiger disc, whatever you call it. It's going to work. And just round off these corners and edges just a little bit. Won't take but a moment. If you don't trust yourself, go ahead and Put the peg in the vise if you're worried about hitting your finger with the grinder. All right, that to me feels pretty good. Okay, so we have our nice ground down peg. All we're gonna do now, grab a pair of pliers, pull off this clip right here, just like that. Push the pin out the top, just like that. And pull out the old peg. And once it's out, you can see just how cheap, once it's out, you can see just how cheap and poorly these things are made. So all you're gonna do is take your new spring right here and slip it over this barrel like this. And then when you slip it in, that just goes over the metal like that. Take your pin, maybe a lot of bit tricky. I'm gonna get a rag and put over this. Okay, so it may help to take a rag and put over these spikes on here. You just have to wiggle that pin in. It's kind of tough because you are fighting against the pressure of the spring. Okay, so a lot of wiggling around with the screwdriver to get the first half in. Now if we can just get the second half to line up. Alright, I will admit, that was quite a handful to get that little spring stretched properly. But it's on there. Looks like I bent that a little bit taking it off. Whoops. I will go ahead and film doing the other side as well, just to see if I learned anything on this side, or see if it's going to be just as hard. I'm thinking it's probably going to be just as hard. Yeah, that thing definitely has some preload to it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and try to knock out this other peg here real quick. Pull it
clip off. Push the pin out. Pin looks like it's still in good shape. This peg, the rubber is, well, it's holding up a little bit better, but still not great. Alright, so I did go ahead and grind down this one as well. About the same amount, just like I said, to keep myself from getting cut. I think I would regret it if I didn't do it. I'm sure this one here is going to be just as big of a handful as the other side was. And then just take a hammer and tap it home. And there you go. Not too bad. And just put your clip back on. Okay, so after I got the pegs installed, I realized pretty quickly after hopping on the bike that the stock shifter is not going to work because the aftermarket peg is wider and the spikes grip your boot, or maybe it's just taller and wider. It doesn't allow you to get your toe underneath the shifter nearly as easily as the stock peg. So if you're going to do this job, you may as well go ahead and figure in that you're going to need to get an aftermarket shifter, unless you're going to modify your stock shifter, which I did consider doing. I thought long and hard about it, but it just seemed easier to go ahead and order a shifter, seeing as the stock KLR shifter is a weak point anyways. Mine has already been broken and welded back together, so there's that. So as you can see, 3.5 inches from the shifter to the edge of the peg. So I went ahead and ordered an IMS shifter. There's a couple other options on the market, but they are longer. I went with the IMS just because I have IMS pegs and I figured they would work well together. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the shifter on, and then I'll show you the measurement difference after that. I'm not going to film changing it because it's super simple. There's one 10mm headed bolt. Take that out, the old shifter slips off, slip the new one on, tighten the bolt back up. That's it, you're done. So I'll get back with you in just a second. Okay, so I got the new IMS shifter installed, and I test fitted it to my foot, and it's way better. So the new shifter is a full inch further out, and it seems just about right. Another thing I noticed is the rubber that your foot presses on to shift is much smaller in diameter on the new shifter, so that helps as well. So that's going to complete this job. Thank y'all for watching. Until next time.